The experience of being on a meditation retreat can be challenging and transformative to many people. Welcome to Mindfulness Voyage. My name is Ted Meissner, and today we're going to be talking about a new book that describes some of the different aspects of going on a mindfulness meditation retreat. Our guest today is Frits Koster. Frits, welcome to the podcast. Good to see you.
Thank you. It's an honor to be here again.
So glad you could join us. And we're going to be talking about, well, a couple of different things today, but I'd like you to take a moment and just introduce yourself to the listeners who might not have heard of you before, what it is you do in mindfulness, and a little bit about your background.
Yeah, well, my name is Frits Koster. You may hear that I come from the Netherlands in my accent. And well, I've been very fortunate that I was very young that I started to practice mindfulness. I was 20 years, I'm now 67. And it really touched me deeply, so deeply that, well, I've been living as a monk in Southeast Asia for about 5-6 years. I've gone back there often. And I've been practicing myself a lot. And also I started guiding retreats and other programs like the mindfulness-based stress reduction training from Jon Kabat-Zinn, as some will surely know, and the compassion training that my colleague Eric van den Brink and me, that we developed in psychiatry, and it went more abroad and internationally as the mindfulness-based compassionate living training. So I've been involved in the practice of mindfulness many years, and well, I happily live with my wife Yeti in a little village in the north of the Netherlands. Well, that I may say like that about me. Yeah.
Thank you. And yeah, at some point, I would like to have both you and Eric back to talk about MBCL, because that's an entirely separate podcast I would really like to unpack with each of you. But today, we're going to be talking about something else. You have a new book coming out. And for those who are listening, and of course, I always link to these things. There will be links to this, because you can do, as of this recording, pre-ordering is available. But I'd like you to say a little bit about what it's about and what prompted you to write this book.
Yeah, it's been on our mind actually many years. I've been teaching retreats since 2000, I think the year 2000 or something like that. And well, I've been guiding a lot of retreats, most of them with my wife Yeti, who's a very experienced practitioner, and some with others in different countries, but most in the Netherlands. And I've been reading many books on meditation throughout the years. And they're wonderful books with what they call Dhamma discourses. Like, for example, Joseph Goldstein, he made such wonderful lectures, which he often used in a retreat, or they're used in retreats. But I always felt it might be good to also have a book which really describes the whole process of going in a retreat, and I couldn't find much about that. Maybe Martine Batchelor has written some about that, but I thought it would be very good to have a book more specifically on that also, for those who are hesitant to go on a retreat, so that they can have a bit more perspective what happens there and what not, and for those who are more experienced retreat practitioners, or that they can find some more deepening by reading more on the whole process of going on a retreat, what belongs to it. And I've been mentioning that many times in retreats we always kept feedback forms after each retreat. So we had about 1,000 or more feedback forms, and they would always say, well, we wish to have your feedback because eventually we plan to write a book. But I always postponed. And then in Corona time, in the Netherlands, everything closed down. I couldn't even guide a retreat. And then I thought, well, this is the moment to write this book. And then I wrote a book, but together with my wife, Yeti, in Dutch. It was published in 2021. And well, I was very glad that our English publisher, Routledge, was also very, I thought they will never publish a book on a meditation retreat because they were much more interested, really secular, but they were very interested in the book also. So that's how an English version now will come out in April, and it's written also together with Victoria Norton, who is a good friend of ours. I've been offering her supervision, but she is also very much like a retreat goer. And she's a native English speaker, and she had very good extra ideas about still expanding the book with still some, for example, also a chapter in the end about, well, what to take and what not to take, and well, things like that. So for the English version, we've written it with the three of us. Yeah.
There are so many layers to unpack about going on a retreat, and you've mentioned a few of them here, from just the basic logistics of what do I bring to managing the expectations around what it will be like there, the kinds of things that you can experience, not just in terms of when I get up, when I eat, tasks I do, how long do I meditate, that kind of stuff, but the internal experience as well. It's really interesting, Frits, to hear you say about you have so much feedback from running retreats. And I'm really curious about that. I'm wondering if there were some common themes that when you were preparing for the book and reading through this feedback over the years of leading retreats, what were some of the common things that people were sharing with you about their experiences in retreat?
Yeah, well, the most common thing I would say is that people accept one or two or so, but that almost all were very happy that they had gone on retreat, and that afterwards that they also really could mention that it had had a good influence in their life in surprising ways. And then if I look at feedback about being in a retreat, one very common thing was, or a few I may mention. One was that many were touched by that there would be, that a gradual shift was possible from a more harsh or cool observation to also a more compassionate approach to things that they would meet during a retreat, and of course in their life in general. So that is something that came up many times in many different ways. And also that many were also touched by something in our approach that I really got from the teacher that I've been with the most. He was a Burmese teacher, Ajahn Asaba. He's not so well known in the West, but Jack Cornfield has been with him. And one could read some about him in one of his oldest books about living Buddhist masters. He has ever written a book. But this Ajahn Asaba, he became he became like a grandfather for me in the practice. And he had a lot of humor in his teaching. And that was so refreshing for me because I met very serious teachers also, and I was already very serious. And then it brought a lot of tension in me, actually, and how liberating it was to also to have a teacher where, oh yeah, an inner smile was much more possible, and some playfulness. And that's something that came out in the feedback often too, because somehow I've taken that along in guiding also, I guess. Yeah.
Again, so many rich layers to this. Part of what you're speaking about from your teacher, from Yajan, this inherited transmission of how he was with bringing of this lightness, this playfulness, humor, which is a very stark contrast to those of us with a different tradition background where there's more heaviness, more severity to it, and that you've carried a different style in your own hosting of retreats, and that's been shared by people, that has had a beneficial influence to how they are. I'm wondering, with the feedback, if there are any things that you can recall that were maybe surprising that have come up over the years in the feedback.
Yeah, I would say often that sometimes just very little things that I wouldn't realize, but that it really touched somebody else, like something I would drop in a guided meditation just lightly, or that somebody would meet on at a table, and that it would really resonate for somebody. I even had somebody, I think I've written that as one of the feedback, because we placed quite a few lines of feedback of participants in the book also to strengthen or to support things that were written. But I remember that one who was really so moved because she thought that she had gotten telepathic contact with the chicken there, and how it really touched her and made her so peaceful. And it's I'm always amazed with what people meet in a retreat, and every time it's a surprise again. Yeah.
If you're going to have a telepathic connection with a chicken, good that it's a peaceful chicken.
yeah, certainly. Yeah.
So, from your own perspective, as someone who has led many retreats, and you mentioned before we started recording, just finishing up a few weeks of a retreat on your own, what is it like for you leading the retreat? What are some of the things that you personally get out of it? Because leading a retreat is a very different experience than being a participant in a retreat with someone else leading. So what is it like for you when you're leading a retreat?
Yeah. I must say it is not so extremely different anymore. In the beginning, it was much more, but I really sort of got an understanding from my first teacher, who was a Thai teacher in the Netherlands. When he asked me very quickly, I hardly didn't know anything about the practice, but I was motivated. I was very motivated, and he asked me to, because he would come to the north of the Netherlands once in a month to guide a weekend there with a family, and I got connected there also, but he supported us to have more something regular, like a weekly meeting, and then he asked me to be as a host. And then I thought, oh well, yeah, but I can't do that. I can't guide probably. And then he said, well, you don't need to share more than that you know. And maybe you're not a teacher or even a guide, but that you're just a host or a facilitator, and that you practice together with the others, and the others practice together with you. And I've always remembered that also in a retreat. And that makes it much lighter also. that it's not really my thing that I have to carry or pull, but 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 that we do together. And yeah, of course I'm keeping an overview somehow, and I would offer individual exchanges with the participants, like inquiry exchanges, and the guidance and like that. Or if somebody gets stuck, then we are there. But still, I always consider teaching a retreat as going on retreat myself too. And in that sense, I just guided one last week in the south of the Netherlands, and it was really wonderful to practice a lot myself too again. So it's really, I would say, it keeps me from the street, from hanging around, and doing more practice myself too. And it's always, yeah, it's always broadening the perspective again for me. Yeah.
So other than the benefit of keeping Frits off the streets, what are some of the things that you might suggest or encourage to people who've maybe never been on a retreat? What are some of the things that they can maybe encourage themselves with?
Yeah, that's an important question. First of all, and we prepare them also always with an extensive mail with things to take care of in advance, but to really to see if they can really leave daily life as much as possible. I mean, it's not always possible. For example, I can plan a retreat in a half a year, and then exactly in that week, one of my family members needs to go to hospital for something very important. I can't, and then it may make sense to mindfully make a connection with a family, but in general, to really to see to it that such a week is really as little connection with the daily life and important people from daily life as possible. So that one can really go on, one can really retreat, as the word also has in it, to step back. And that's of course challenging for a first time. I remember my first retreat, I got that message too, but I got so nervous that I bought many chocolate bars every day, 2 chocolate bars. And in one day I had eaten them all already. So that was really, yeah. But to that may be something important. And also, we always consider if it's the right time to go on retreat. For example, if we get from a application form that somebody has more a specific vulnerability or disease, like for example, long COVID, is that English too? Yeah, long COVID nowadays. Oh, then we really see that we connect beforehand and explore together in a Zoom meeting. Oh yeah, hey, what's necessary to take along for you? Or somebody with a specific handicap had to really take things along that you need, or medicines and things like that. So to really take care that one can really go in a safe but also in a relaxed manner, so to speak. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, for those who are curious about retreats and finding out a little bit more about them, if you've never been on one, or perhaps you're very experienced with retreats and you're curious about a little bit more perspective and maybe some learnings about what others have in those experiences, I do encourage you to check out this book. Again, I will have a link to that and a couple of other places as well. Our guest today, Frits Koster. Frits, thank you so much for this overview. Wonderful to have you here today.
Thank you. It was a joy. Thank you.
thanks so much for being here. I hope you enjoyed today's episode and our conversation with our friend Frits Koster. Again, please do remember to subscribe to this podcast because it helps others to find it. And I hope you enjoy your retreat experience if you eventually go on one. Remember, every moment you have a choice. Make it the best you can, and I'll see you again soon on Mindfulness Voyage.